Did you know that native English speakers actually speak 30% faster in real conversations than in language learning materials? Right now, while you're watching this video, millions of English learners around the world are struggling with the exact same problem you might be facing. They understand English perfectly when reading textbooks. They can follow slow, clear pronunciation in educational videos, but the moment they encounter a real conversation, a movie scene, or a casual chat with a native speaker, everything sounds like gibberish. If you've ever felt like native speakers are speaking in code, like their words are racing past you at lightning speed, you're about to discover why this happens and, more importantly, how to finally break through this barrier that's been holding you back. The truth is, what you learned in traditional English classes is just the tip of the iceberg. Real English, the English that flows through coffee shops in New York, echoes in the hallways of London offices, and fills the conversations of friends hanging out on weekends, operates by completely different rules. Native speakers don't speak the way textbooks teach. They contract words, blend sounds together, drop entire syllables, and create shortcuts that make perfect sense to them, but sound like a foreign language to learners. But here's what most people don't realize. This isn't a flaw in your English skills. It's simply a different dialect of the language you already know. Once you understand the patterns, once you crack the code of natural speech, you'll discover that fast English isn't actually faster at all. It just follows rhythms and rules that nobody ever taught you. Think of learning to understand fast English like learning to drive in a busy city after only practicing in an empty parking lot. You know the basics, you understand the mechanics, but suddenly you're surrounded by honking horns, quick lane changes, and split-second decisions. The skills are the same, but the environment demands a completely different level of awareness and reaction time. That's exactly what happens when you transition from classroom English to real-world conversations. Your brain needs to adjust to a new speed, a new rhythm, and a new set of patterns that native speakers use instinctively. The good news is that with the right techniques and consistent practice, your brain can make this adjustment faster than you might think. You don't need years of study or expensive courses. You just need to understand how natural English really works. Let's start with the foundation of fast speech: connected speech. When native speakers talk naturally, they don't pronounce each word separately like robots. Instead, they create smooth chains of sound where one word flows seamlessly into the next. For example, "What are you doing?" becomes "What you're doing." And "I am going to" transforms into "I'm gonna." These aren't mistakes or lazy pronunciation. They're the natural evolution of spoken language. Every language does this. English just has its own unique patterns. When you understand that sh becomes shoulda and could you becomes could ya, suddenly half the mystery of fast English disappears. Your brain stops searching for perfect textbook pronunciation and starts recognizing the actual sounds that native speakers produce. This is why English learners often say they can read English perfectly, but struggle to understand movies or conversations. They're listening for one thing while native speakers are saying another. The rhythm of English is another crucial element that most learners miss completely. English isn't spoken with equal stress on every syllable like some languages. Instead, it has a bouncing musical quality where important words get emphasized, while less important words get reduced or almost swallowed. In the sentence, "I didn't say he stole the money," the meaning changes completely depending on which word you stress. If you emphasize "I," you're saying someone else said it. If you emphasize "stole," you're saying he did something else with the money. Native speakers use this rhythm naturally, but for learners, it can make sentences sound completely different from what they expect. Understanding this rhythm isn't just about comprehension, it's about unlocking the emotional and contextual meaning behind words. When you start hearing the music in English speech, you stop translating and start truly understanding. Here's where most English courses get it wrong. They teach you to listen for individual words when you should be listening for chunks of meaning. Native speakers don't think "I plus am plus going plus to plus the plus store." They think in complete phrases, "I'm going to the store," as one fluid unit of meaning. This is called chunking, and it's how your brain processes your native language too. When someone says, "How are you?" in your native language, you don't analyze each word separately. You recognize the entire greeting instantly. The same thing needs to happen with English. When you start recognizing common chunks, what's up? How's it going? I'll be right back. And let me know. Your brain stops working overtime to decode individual words and starts processing meaning at native speed. This is the difference between struggling to understand and effortlessly following along. The secret weapon that advanced English learners use is called shadowing, and it's probably the most powerful technique you've never heard of. Shadowing means listening to native speech and immediately repeating it, like an echo, matching the speed, rhythm, and intonation as closely as possible. You're not trying to understand every word. You're training your mouth and brain to move at native speed. Find a short video clip, maybe 30 seconds long, and play one sentence at a time. Listen, then immediately repeat, trying to match not just the words but the emotion and rhythm. At first you'll stumble, you'll miss words, you'll feel like your tongue can't keep up. That's normal. But after just a week of daily shadowing practice, something magical happens. Your brain starts anticipating the flow of English speech. Your mouth gets comfortable with native rhythms. And suddenly you're not just understanding fast English, you're producing it. Most English learners make a critical mistake when watching movies or videos. They focus too hard on catching every single word. This creates anxiety and actually makes comprehension worse. Instead, try the visualization technique. When you hear, "She grabbed her keys and rushed out the door," don't think about the grammar or vocabulary. Instead, create a mental movie. Picture a woman quickly picking up keys and hurrying outside. See the scene in your mind like you're watching a film. This is how native speakers process language. They don't analyze words, they experience meaning. When you hear, "The weather's been crazy lately. Yesterday was freezing and today it's scorching," you should see changing weather patterns. Feel the temperature contrast, not parse grammatical structures. This shift from analytical listening to experiential listening is what transforms struggling students into confident speakers. Let's talk about the elephant in the room: anxiety. The fear of not understanding fast speech often creates more problems than the actual speed itself. When you're anxious about missing words, your brain tenses up, your concentration narrows, and you actually understand less than you would if you were relaxed. Native speakers miss things too. They ask, "What did you say?" Or, "Can you repeat that?" All the time. Understanding isn't about perfection. It's about getting enough information to stay engaged in the conversation. Start embracing the 70% rule. If you understand 70% of what someone says, you can usually follow the conversation and even participate meaningfully. This mindset shift from perfectionism to communication takes the pressure off and paradoxically helps you understand more. When you stop panicking about missing words, your brain has more energy to focus on the words you do catch. One of the most effective ways to improve your listening is through something called narrow listening. Instead of jumping between different topics, accents, and speakers, choose one TV show, one podcast, or one YouTube channel and stick with it for a month. Watch or listen to multiple episodes of the same content. This focused approach allows your brain to get familiar with specific voices, recurring vocabulary, and consistent speech patterns. After a few episodes, you'll notice that the same speakers seem to be talking slower, even though they're not. Your brain has simply adapted to their specific way of speaking. This is how immersion works. You don't need to move to an English-speaking country. You just need to create deep familiarity with specific English content. Once you master understanding one native speaker clearly, you can transfer those skills to others much more easily. Background noise and multiple speakers can make understanding even more challenging, but they're actually excellent training opportunities. Real life rarely happens in perfect silence with one person speaking clearly. Practice listening to English in realistic conditions, conversations with background music, group discussions where people interrupt each other, phone calls with slight audio delays. Start by watching scenes from movies or TV shows where multiple people are talking, maybe during a dinner scene or a meeting. Try to follow just one person's voice while ignoring the others. This selective listening skill is crucial for real-world communication. In restaurants, parties, or busy environments, you'll need to filter out distractions and focus on the person you're speaking with. Training with challenging audio conditions makes normal conversations feel much easier by comparison. Intonation carries enormous meaning in English, often more than the actual words themselves. The sentence, "great job," can mean genuine praise or complete sarcasm, depending on how it's said. "You're going to love this" can express excitement or dread based on the speaker's tone. Native speakers use rising intonation for questions, falling intonation for statements, and complex patterns to show emotion, doubt, or emphasis. When you start paying attention to these musical elements of speech, you gain access to layers of meaning that go far beyond vocabulary and grammar. Practice by listening to the same sentence said with different emotions. Notice how fine can mean everything from genuine agreement to barely contained frustration. This emotional intelligence in listening is what separates advanced learners from beginners. Here's a technique that most English teachers never mention: predictive listening. Native speakers don't just react to what they hear. They anticipate what's coming next based on context, previous words, and social situations. When someone starts saying, "Could you please pass the," your brain should already be thinking about objects that can be passed: salt, water, napkin, remote control. This predictive ability dramatically improves comprehension speed because you're not processing language in real time. You're staying ahead of it. Practice this by watching conversations and trying to guess the next word or phrase before it's said. The more you understand common English patterns in social scripts, the more your brain can fill in gaps automatically. This is why understanding gets easier over time, not just because your vocabulary improves, but because your brain learns to predict patterns. Casual English includes thousands of expressions that textbooks never teach but native speakers use daily. Phrases like, "I'm beat," meaning, "I'm tired." "It's a piece of cake," meaning, "It's easy." Or "let's call it a day," meaning "let's finish." These expressions carry cultural meaning and emotional weight that direct translations can't capture. The key is exposure and context. When you hear these phrases in movies, conversations, or videos, your brain connects them to situations and emotions, not just definitions. Start a collection of phrases you hear repeatedly. Write them down with the context where you heard them. "She was over the moon" when talking about someone getting engaged. "He's pulling my leg" when someone is joking around. Building this phrase library gives you access to the real personality of English, the humor, creativity, and cultural flavor that makes conversations interesting. Technology can be your best friend in developing listening skills, but only if you use it strategically. Instead of passively watching videos, use the pause and replay functions actively. When you hear something confusing, don't just continue hoping you'll figure it out later. Stop, rewind, listen again. Modern video platforms allow you to slow down playback speed without changing the pitch. Use this feature to bridge the gap between slow, clear speech and natural speed. Start at 75% speed, then 85%, then normal speed. Your brain needs this gradual acceleration to adjust comfortably. Also, use subtitles intelligently. Watch with English subtitles first to connect sounds with spelling, then watch again without subtitles to test your comprehension. Never rely on subtitles as a crutch. Use them as a learning tool that you gradually remove as your skills improve. The difference between struggling learners and confident speakers often comes down to mindset about mistakes and incomplete understanding. Struggling learners panic when they miss words and lose focus on everything that follows. Confident speakers accept that they'll miss some things and stay engaged with the overall flow of conversation. They ask clarifying questions naturally. "Sorry, did you say Tuesday or Thursday?" Or "Wait, who are we talking about again?" This isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of active participation. Native speakers do this constantly with each other. Understanding English isn't about perfect comprehension, it's about effective communication. When you adopt this mindset, listening becomes less stressful and more natural. You stop being a passive receiver of perfect information and become an active participant in dynamic conversation. Accent variety is one of the most overlooked aspects of listening development. American English from California sounds different from New York, which sounds different from Texas, which sounds different from British English from London, Manchester, or Scotland. Each accent has its own rhythm, vowel sounds, and common expressions. The mistake most learners make is trying to master one correct accent instead of developing flexibility to understand many. Start with one accent that you hear most often, probably American or British, but gradually expose yourself to others. Watch Australian news, listen to Canadian podcasts, find videos from different English-speaking regions. This variety training makes your brain adaptable instead of rigid. When you encounter a new accent in real life, instead of being confused, you'll be curious and engaged. Speed isn't actually the main problem with understanding native speakers. It's the reduction and linking that happens at natural pace. Native speakers reduce unstressed words to almost nothing. What are you going to do? Becomes what you're gonna do? The words are, you, going, and to get compressed into barely recognizable sounds. At the same time, final consonants link to beginning vowels across word boundaries. Turn it off, and sounds like, what's up? These changes aren't random. They follow predictable patterns that you can learn. Practice by taking written sentences and saying them faster and faster until they naturally reduce and link. Record yourself doing this and compare it to how native speakers say the same sentences. You'll discover that you can actually produce these patterns yourself once you understand how they work. Emotional context changes everything about how English sounds and flows. Excited speech is faster and higher in pitch. Sad or tired speech slows down and drops in pitch. Angry speech has sharp consonants and tight vowels. Casual, friendly speech is more relaxed with stretched vowels and softer consonants. When you tune into these emotional patterns, you gain access to meaning that goes far beyond words. Someone saying fine, whatever, with a sharp, quick tone is expressing frustration, even if the words themselves seem neutral. Practice this by watching emotional scenes in movies or TV shows. Focus on how the speed, pitch, and rhythm change with different feelings. This emotional intelligence in listening helps you understand not just what people are saying, but what they really mean and how they feel about it. Context is your secret weapon for understanding fast speech. When you know the situation, the topic, and the relationship between speakers, your brain can fill in words you might miss. If you're watching a restaurant scene, you can predict words like menu, order, check, and table, even if you don't hear them clearly. If friends are discussing weekend plans, expect vocabulary about activities, times, and places. This contextual listening is how native speakers understand each other, even in noisy environments or with unclear pronunciation. Before listening to any English content, take a moment to consider who is speaking. Where are they? What are they likely discussing? This preparation primes your brain to recognize relevant vocabulary and patterns, making comprehension significantly easier. Repetition is the mother of retention, but smart repetition is the key to breakthrough results. Instead of listening to the same content mindlessly, use progressive repetition. Listen to a 1-minute conversation clip first for general understanding. What's the situation? Who's talking? What's the main topic? Then listen again, focusing on catching specific words you missed the first time. On the third listen, try to repeat along with the speakers, matching their rhythm and intonation. Finally, listen one more time without any effort, just enjoying the flow of natural English. This 4-step process trains different aspects of listening: comprehension, detail recognition, production, and fluency. 15 minutes of this focused practice is worth hours of passive listening. Cultural references and shared knowledge play a huge role in how native speakers communicate quickly. They use shortcuts based on common experiences, popular culture, and social assumptions. When someone says, "It's not rocket science," they're not talking about space exploration, they mean something as simple. When they mention Monday morning blues, they're referring to the universal feeling of not wanting to start the work week. These cultural phrases carry meaning that goes beyond literal translation. They're emotional and social shortcuts that native speakers use to connect with each other quickly. Building familiarity with these cultural elements isn't just about understanding language. It's about understanding the society where that language lives. Watch popular TV shows, learn about common cultural references, and pay attention to phrases that seem to carry more meaning than their literal words suggest. The psychology of listening confidence cannot be underestimated. When you believe you can understand, Your brain works differently than when you expect to fail. Confident listeners take risks, make educated guesses, and stay engaged even when they miss some words. They trust that understanding will come from context and continued listening. Anxious listeners give up at the first sign of confusion, which guarantees failure. Start building confidence with material that's slightly below your current level. Choose content where you understand about 80% clearly. This success builds the mental foundation for tackling more challenging material. Celebrate small victories. Understanding a joke, catching a cultural reference, following a rapid exchange between friends. These moments of success train your brain that understanding fast English is not only possible, it's inevitable with practice. Listening actively rather than passively makes an enormous difference in comprehension speed and retention. Active listening means engaging your whole brain, predicting what might come next, visualizing what you hear, connecting new information to what you already know, and asking mental questions about the content. When someone describes their day, you're not just hearing words, you're building a timeline of events in your mind. When they express an opinion, you're considering whether you agree or disagree. This mental engagement keeps your brain alert and focused, which dramatically improves comprehension. Passive listening, where you just let words wash over you without engagement, might feel easier, but produces much slower improvement. Challenge yourself to stay mentally active during every listening session. Register and formality changes significantly affect speech speed and complexity. The same person who speaks clearly and slowly in a business presentation might speak rapidly and casually with friends after work. Formal English tends to be slower, clearer, and more complete. Casual English is faster, more reduced, and full of shortcuts. Understanding this spectrum helps you adjust your expectations and strategies based on the situation. Job interviews, news broadcasts, and academic lectures usually feature more formal speech patterns. Conversations between friends, family interactions, and social media content typically use casual, fast speech. Practice with both registers, but recognize that casual speech is often more challenging because it's less predictable and more creative. Don't expect to understand casual conversation at the same level as formal speech initially. Real-world listening practice should simulate actual communication situations as closely as possible. This means practicing with background noise, interruptions, multiple speakers, and imperfect audio quality. Most English learning materials present ideal listening conditions that don't exist in real life. Challenge yourself with realistic audio environments, conversations in cafes with background music, phone calls with slight delays, or static group discussions where people talk over each other. These conditions initially make understanding more difficult, but they prepare you for actual communication scenarios. When you can follow a conversation in a noisy restaurant or understand someone speaking while walking quickly down a busy street, normal conversations become remarkably easy by comparison. Motivation and consistency trump intensive study every time when it comes to developing listening skills. 30 minutes of engaged listening practice daily for a month produces better results than 5 hours of intensive study once a week. Your brain needs regular, consistent exposure to build the neural pathways that recognize fast speech patterns. Choose content you genuinely enjoy. This makes daily practice feel less like work and more like entertainment. Whether it's comedy shows, cooking videos, sports commentary, or technology reviews, find English content that matches your interests. When learning feels enjoyable, you'll naturally spend more time doing it, and more time means faster improvement. Set small, achievable daily goals rather than overwhelming weekly targets. The transition from understanding to responding happens gradually, then suddenly. For months, you might feel like you're making slow progress, understanding a little more each week, but still struggling with fast conversations. Then one day, seemingly overnight, everything clicks. You realize you've been following a rapid conversation without strain. You catch jokes in real time. You understand regional accents that used to confuse you completely. This breakthrough moment happens because your brain has been building listening skills in the background, even when progress felt slow. Trust the process. Celebrate small improvements, and remember that language learning isn't linear. Plateaus are normal, and breakthroughs often come after periods that feel stagnant. Advanced listening involves understanding what's not said as much as what is said. Native speakers use implication, sarcasm, understatement, and cultural references to communicate meaning indirectly. When someone says, "That's interesting," in a flat tone, they might mean the opposite. When they say, "I'll think about it," they might be politely declining. This subtext requires cultural knowledge and emotional intelligence, not just language skills. Develop this advanced understanding by paying attention to context, tone, and body language in video content. Notice when the literal meaning of words doesn't match the speaker's apparent intention. This level of listening comprehension is what enables you to navigate complex social situations and truly connect with native speakers. Grammar rules you learned in school often work differently in fast, casual speech. Native speakers break rules constantly, and this isn't incorrect English, it's natural English evolution. "Who did you give it to?" is technically wrong according to formal grammar, but it's how people actually speak. "Between you and I" should be "between you and me," but millions of native speakers use the first version. Understanding that spoken English has different rules than written English frees you from expecting textbook perfection and helps you recognize actual usage patterns. Focus on understanding how people really communicate rather than how they're supposed to communicate according to grammar books. Developing English listening skills through authentic content means choosing materials created for native speakers, not for learners. Educational content designed for English students uses simplified vocabulary, slower speech, and clearer pronunciation. While this is helpful for building foundations, it doesn't prepare you for real communication. Challenge yourself with content made for entertainment, information, or communication between native speakers. Talk shows, news interviews, casual YouTube videos, sports commentary, movie scenes. This authentic material exposes you to natural speech patterns, cultural references, and real-world vocabulary that you'll encounter in actual conversations. Start with content that has visual context, like movies or interviews, where body language and setting provide comprehension clues. The neuroscience of language learning reveals that understanding and production are closely connected in the brain. When you practice speaking with native-like rhythm and intonation, you're simultaneously training your brain to recognize those same patterns when listening. This is why shadowing practice is so effective. It develops both skills simultaneously. Your mouth teaches your ears what to expect, and your ears teach your mouth how to move. Record yourself speaking and compare it to native speakers. Notice differences in rhythm, stress, and linking. The closer your speech sounds to native patterns, the easier it becomes to understand those patterns when others use them. This connection between speaking and listening is why immersive environments work so well for language development. Memory and recognition work hand in hand for listening improvement. Your brain recognizes patterns it has encountered before much faster than completely new information. This is why exposure to variety is crucial. The more different voices, accents, topics, and speaking styles you experience, the larger your recognition database becomes. When you encounter fast speech in real life, your brain searches through this database for familiar patterns and uses them to decode new information. Build this database intentionally by exposing yourself to diverse English content regularly. Don't just stick to one type of video or one accent. Variety trains your brain to be flexible and adaptable, which is essential for understanding the full spectrum of English communication. Practical application is where listening skills transform into real-world communication ability. All the techniques, exercises, and practice sessions are building toward one goal: effortless participation in genuine English conversations. This means understanding not just words and grammar, but humor, emotion, cultural references, and social dynamics. It means following rapid exchanges between multiple speakers, catching implied meanings, and responding appropriately to different social registers. This level of listening ability doesn't happen overnight, but every practice session, every movie you watch, every podcast you follow is contributing to this ultimate goal. Stay focused on why you're developing these skills: to connect with people, to access information, to participate fully in English-speaking environments. Breakthrough moments in listening comprehension often come when you least expect them. You might be watching a comedy show and suddenly realize you're laughing at jokes without translating them first. Or you could be listening to a podcast during your commute and notice that you've been following complex discussions effortlessly. These moments of realization are incredibly motivating and signal that your brain has internalized new levels of English processing. When they happen, take note of what type of content triggered the breakthrough and try to replicate those conditions in your practice sessions. Understanding how your personal learning process works helps you optimize your practice time and stay motivated during challenging periods. Maintenance and continued growth require ongoing exposure to challenging material. Even after you achieve comfortable comprehension, language skills need regular use to stay sharp, and listening skills are particularly vulnerable to decline without practice. Native level listening ability isn't a destination you reach and then stop working toward. It's a skill that requires continued engagement with evolving language. Slang changes, cultural references update, and new expressions enter common usage constantly. Stay connected to current English through recent movies, contemporary podcasts, and modern social media content. This ongoing engagement keeps your skills current and ensures that your hard-earned listening ability continues growing rather than stagnating. Your journey to understanding fast native English speakers is unique, but the destination is the same for everyone: effortless, confident comprehension that allows genuine communication and connection. Every challenge you face, every word you miss, every moment of confusion is part of the learning process that ultimately leads to fluency. The techniques you've learned today, shadowing, chunking, visualization, predictive listening, and active engagement, are your tools for this journey. Use them consistently. Be patient with your progress. And remember that every native speaker you'll ever meet learned to understand fast speech through exactly the same process: massive exposure, consistent practice, and gradual improvement.